Another escalation in the trade dispute between China and Canada. This morning, China announced a preliminary anti-dumping duty on Canadian canola imports.
China is taking aim at Canadian canola farmers. Beijing's new tariff on exports of raw canola from Canada at a rate of nearly 76% are now in place.
Imagine losing your biggest buyer overnight. A single decision by a foreign government suddenly wipes out billions from your economy and throws thousands of farmers into uncertainty. For most countries, that would spell disaster. But for Canada, it became something else entirely. When China slapped a staggering 75.8% tariff on Canadian canola, the move looked like a knockout punch. Canada's farmers were staring down one of the worst crises in decades. But what happened next shocked the world. Instead of collapsing, Canada flipped the script and transformed a crushing blow into a strategic win. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. China, Canada's second-largest buyer of canola, was imposing a nearly 76% anti-dumping tariff. Overnight, billions in trade were at risk. For Canadian farmers, canola isn't just a crop, it's their lifeline, worth over $12 billion USD annually to the economy. The immediate fallout was brutal. Global canola prices dropped. Revenues sank. Farmers who had already invested in planting faced the prospect of massive losses. Small rural communities, heavily dependent on agriculture, braced for economic shockwaves. Commentators framed it as an act of punishment. This could be devastating, some warned, painting a picture of farmers abandoned and markets lost. But here's where the story takes a twist. What looked like a devastating strike was actually the start of one of Canada's smartest trade pivots in years. To understand why this happened, you need to rewind. Just months earlier, Canada had made its own bold move. It slapped a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, aligning with Western allies who claimed Beijing was flooding markets with subsidized products. Beijing wasn't happy. And when governments want to send a message, they rarely do it quietly. The canola tariff was retaliation, wrapped in the language of anti-dumping, but carrying all the weight of a political warning. China claimed Canadian subsidies distorted prices and hurt its domestic farmers. Canada countered that its policies were about stability, not manipulation. But make no mistake, this was about power, not crops. Still, in trying to flex muscle, China may have underestimated Canada's ability to strike back in a way no one expected. When the news broke, panic could have spread. But Canada's government acted with unusual speed. Price insurance programs were rolled out, reserve funds were set aside. Farmers were told in no uncertain terms, "You will not be left behind." The message mattered as much as the money. Confidence was restored. Farmers who feared bankruptcy instead saw that the government was ready to absorb some of the shock. This wasn't just about stabilizing income. It was about buying time. Time Canada needed to pivot and rethink its global trade strategy. And that's exactly what happened next. When the news broke, panic could have spread. But Canada's government acted with unusual speed. Price insurance programs were rolled out. Reserve funds were set aside. Farmers were told in no uncertain terms, "You will not be left behind." The message mattered as much as the money. Confidence was restored. Farmers who feared bankruptcy instead saw that the government was ready to absorb some of the shock. This wasn't just about stabilizing income. It was about buying time. Time Canada needed to pivot and rethink its global trade strategy. And that's exactly what happened next. For decades, Canada had exported canola mostly as a raw commodity. Bulk shipments, low margins, predictable business. But when China's tariffs forced a rethink, industry leaders saw an opportunity to go premium. Instead of simply selling raw seeds, they invested heavily in processing. Out came refined vegetable oils, bio-based food ingredients, and even clean energy products. Suddenly, canola wasn't just food, it was fuel, innovation, and high-value tech material. This shift changed everything. Instead of being at the mercy of raw commodity prices, Canada positioned itself to capture bigger profits and wield greater influence in negotiations. One industry executive put it best: "We're not just selling crops anymore, we're selling solutions for the future." The move didn't just strengthen the canola sector. It elevated Canada's reputation as a country capable of turning crisis into innovation. But while Canada was leveling up, something surprising was happening on the other side of the world. Beijing thought the tariff would weaken Canada. But trade is never one-sided. The restrictions created ripple effects back home. By cutting off Canadian imports, Chinese processors were suddenly forced to pay higher domestic prices. Supply chains strained. Costs for businesses and consumers rose. What was supposed to be a show of strength began looking like a self-inflicted wound. While this rarely made headlines, insiders knew the truth. China's tariff hurt its own industries as much as it hurt Canada's, and quietly, global markets were watching. What they saw was not a dominant China controlling trade, but a resilient Canada turning weakness into power. This wasn't just about canola. It was a lesson for the entire global economy. Canada proved that adaptability beats size. It showed that even a mid-sized economy could outmaneuver a giant if it had the right mix of strategy, innovation, and diversification. Experts began pointing to Canada as a case study. Other nations facing trade wars, whether over steel, tech, or energy, looked at Canada's blueprint for survival. And in the halls of global trade policy, a new narrative was forming. Canada wasn't a victim of tariffs. It was a strategist rewriting the rules of the game. What began as a devastating tariff ended as a showcase of resilience. Canada didn't just defend its farmers, it transformed its agricultural sector into a global force. Exports diversified, products upgraded, bargaining power strengthened, and most importantly, Canada walked away stronger than before. The tariff that was supposed to cripple its economy became the very catalyst that elevated it. It's proof of a powerful truth in global trade. Sometimes the harshest setbacks spark the greatest transformations. The story of Canada's canola isn't one of defeat. It's one of reinvention. From panic to power, from raw seeds to global innovation, Canada showed that adaptability is the ultimate weapon in trade wars. And it leaves us with a question. If a single crop can rewrite the playbook of global trade, what happens when entire industries face the same kind of pressure? That's the hidden battle shaping tomorrow's world economy, and it's one you won't want to miss. So if you want to stay ahead of the curve, hit subscribe and join us as we uncover the next shocking twist in global trade.